waking up in the morning feeling like you are just exhausted and need to head straight for the pot of coffee because you have no energy. Increased muscle tension, nervousness, jitteriness, night sweats, all of these things, increased inflammation, and increased susceptibility to infection. Even more obvious, remember with the sympathetic nervous system, your body releases a lot of cortisol. So with this so-called stress hormone, here's why. Your cortisol levels will rise in response to stress. Cortisol is meant to serve a good purpose. But again, when you're overstimulated by stress all the time, sympathetic nervous system's kicking this out, your cortisol levels get too high. If you have any of these, you're likely producing too much cortisol. Increased body fat, particularly the stubborn fat. Cortisol, the most obvious sign of cortisol is when you have your location of fat, where it is, where you have the most. So if you have a lot of belly fat, that's cortisol. If you feel tired, worn out, low on energy, you have trouble losing weight, you feel sad or depressed, you have difficulty sleeping, wake feeling unrested, memory problems or difficulty concentrating. We always think, oh my God, I'm getting old, I'm losing my mind. Well, these are things that are going on. Cravings for alcohol or sugar, and also you can add to that list cravings for stimulants, caffeine, or red, gold type energy drinks, things like that. Anyway, so if we're learning about stress, then we know what it does. The question is, why are we so stressed? What's going on that's causing all of this? Well, according to a study done in 1999, a government report, the average American works 47 hours a week. Now, granted, this was 1999, but I guarantee you, this many years later, it's not getting any better because Americans are working longer and harder than any other industrialized nation in the world. So in 2000, this was a surprising survey. 65% of workers say that workplace stress and cause difficulties. More than 10% describe these as having major effects. 19%, almost 1 in 5, had quit a previous position because of job stress. Nearly 1 in 4 have been driven to tears because of workplace stress. Being that we spend so much of our time at our jobs becomes a pretty serious issue going on. 62% routinely find the end of the day with work-related neck pain. 44% reported stressed out eyes. 38% complained about hurting hands. And 34% reported difficulty in sleeping because they were too stressed out. 12% called in sick because of job stress, and over half say they spend 12-hour days on work-related job duties, and an equal number frequently skip lunch because of the stress that job demands. Holy cow, that's a lot. Absenteeism due to job stress is on the rise. A survey of 800,000 workers in over 300 companies, the number of employees calling in sick because of stress tripled. An estimated 1 million workers are absent every day due to stress. Unanticipated absenteeism is estimated to cost American companies $602 per worker per year, and the price tag for large employers could approach $3.5 million annually. In the 1997 3-year study, 3 years by one large corporation found 60% of employee absences could be traced to psychological problems that were due to stress. So we know what's going on and why we're so stressed out. And if you're thinking, well, it just doesn't affect me all that bad, well, let's take a look at a typical day in the life. So we have our typical person over here that, we wake up in the morning and we may have been tossing and turning all night. We may have had trouble falling back asleep. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you may have just woken up. You slept maybe 8 hours or 7 hours, but you feel like you only slept 1 hour. So you've got some stress going on because that mind of ours starts to race in the middle of the night, right? We wake up, and we feel kind of unrested, low on energy, and what do we do first thing in the morning? Head for the pot of coffee, right? So we've got some mental stress, and then we've got the stress from the coffee, and maybe we grab a donut or a bagel or something that easily converts to sugar in our body. So you can see already, just from these two things, before you're even out the door to work, if this is going on, the degree to which stress is affecting you. The sympathetic nervous system's pumping right away. Well, then we go to work and we've got the pressure of our deadlines to meet. So we're trying to get a million things done and we never have enough time. We probably don't eat a whole lot between the time we woke up and the time lunchtime's approaching. So then what do? Well, we probably hop down to our favorite restaurant and grab the quickest thing that we can get. And most of us don't even have the time, even on an hour lunch break, to take a nice relaxing lunch. Racing down there, getting the food, gobbling it down, and getting right back to work. Work the rest of the day, and all you want to do at this point, you've got nutritional stress added to the mix. You've got emotional stress from all the pressure of deadlines and your boss breathing down your neck or whatever is going on. And all you want to do is, because you're so hyped out and mentally and emotionally and physically, you just want to go home and relax. 5 o'clock rolls around, but you remembered you've got to lose those 15 pounds because you've either got that wedding coming up you want to look fit for, your birthday's coming up, or the vacation, or whatever it is that you want to lose the weight for. So without any energy, you reluctantly just drag yourself into that exercise class and go through your hour of exercise, more physical stress. And then by the time you get home, you probably haven't eaten a whole bunch, and what we do is plow down a big fat dinner plate, maybe a little bit dessert. Not that I would ever do that. And then we veg out on the couch all night, only to do it again the next day. That exhausts me. I don't know about you, but that just wipes me out thinking about that. And that's only one day, and we tend to do that at least Monday through Friday, if not more days than 5 a week. So all these signs of stress, this is typically what's going on. So here's my little Beth diagram. You guys are going to love these diagrams I make. By the end of the night, you're going to just go, God, I love those diagrams you did. Or they'll really annoy you. But how stress really affects us. So this is just the diagram I created to really break it all down. So in the middle here, the S is stress. So every time we experience a stress, whether it's quote unquote bad or healthy, good for us, it all adds up. So how many of you have seen the movie The Secret? The Secret? Awesome, me too. In the movie The Secret, there was one of the guys that was interviewed, Bill Harris, and he created this program called Holosync, and it's really incredible stuff. But he wrote a book called Thresholds of Mind, and in it, he describes to a T the whole concept of a stress threshold, that we each have our own individual capacity for how much stress we can handle. Now, most stress management programs, well, they tend to focus more over here on the negative things. Right? We have bills we need to pay, we have deadlines at work, we know all of these things, and they tend to recommend things like exercise. Like go out and go for a walk, go lift weights, go move around. But the one thing that they fail to address is that it doesn't matter if the stress is good or if it's bad, healthy or unhealthy, it all adds up. So it's kind of like this stress bank account that we've got inside of us. And every time we take on a stressor, it builds, and it pushes us closer to our threshold. Now, as long as we stay within this threshold, we can effectively manage stress pretty well without too many difficulties. Problems happen when we get bumped up and we get overloaded. So once we get bumped up there, a lot of problems tend to happen. We start shutting down, we can't deal with it, and it's not too big of a deal if it happens once in a while, but if you're chronically overstressed, which most people are, because their sympathetic nervous system's pumping like a never-ending NASCAR race, round and round and round, and the only pit stop we get is when our head hits the pillow at night for a few hours before we're off to the races again. What happens is you end up with a lot of potential for physical, mental, emotional imbalances, destructive type behaviors. So a lot of long-term effects. So the many faces of stress. We've got so many different forms of stress. By the time we wake up in the morning until our head hits the pillow at night, we're just bombarded with it. And a lot of it is going on that we really can't do a whole lot about. There's environmental stresses that happen in the air and everything. Not a whole lot we can do about it. But there are a lot of stresses that we can do things about. So we've got all these different types of stress: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual stress, nutritional, environmental, electromagnetic, chemical, all of these stresses. And out of all of them, our body's actually designed to function with stressors that are brief, acute bouts of stress. But the problems again happen when we're dealing with the chronic stress, the stuff that's there all the time. Our sympathetic nervous system just won't stop it. So chronic stress results in all of the following: tissue breakdown, rapid aging, increased susceptibility to illness, infections, colds, allergies, things like that, weight gain, weight retention, chronic pain, stubborn fat, obesity. So, within stress, we have catabolic responses. Right? Stress kind of causes all this or activates. Catabolic has to do with breaking down. It's just energy spending, it's breaking down our tissues, kind of like exercise. You go and you run on the treadmill for an hour, or like our marathoner guys here who log a lot of miles in running all the time. They're constantly in this catabolic state where their bodies are just breaking down and spending energy all the time. Catabolic processes negatively affect our digestion and absorption as well. They increase the catabolic stress hormones that we have. So on the other hand, we've got our anabolic processes. And our anabolic are the exact opposite. These are our energy building processes, our body's natural recovery to stress, kind of a recovery mechanism. Supports digestion and absorption, and something that we tend to not associate with rest is that our hormones that burn fat and actually build muscle are peaking during our times like when we sleep. At least they're supposed to. So we actually burn fat pretty effectively when we're sleeping. We tend to think like when we're resting, we're not working out if we're trying to lose weight, and the only way that we can lose weight is by working out. So a real good example of anabolic and catabolic are these two guys over here. We've got our marathon runner over on the right there. Nothing against marathon running, by the way. Just a good example. And our sprinter over here on the left. And you could look at the differences. You could see right away the differences physically in their body structure. You've got this gentleman over here who, the catabolic responses, like I said, they're just breaking down the body all of the time. Joints are taking a pounding. And this guy over here, though, he's a lot more muscular. He's a lot leaner looking. You look at the facial expressions over here, I don't think he looks like he's having a lot of fun. This guy looks like he's really focused, he's determined, he's alert and aware. And so just kind of the two differences. And it's very interesting, especially nowadays with so many people whose main goals regarding their fitness and health is to lose weight. And they spend hours, we're spending all this time in the gym doing all these long cardio sessions, kickboxing classes, sculpting, salsa, Zumba, toning, Pilates, water aerobics, all of this cardio, and yet we still have a problem with our weight, despite all the best technology we have, all the newest equipments that are lined up in the gym. If you go to the gym at pretty much any time of the day during peak hours, the most crowded area is always the cardio area. Everybody's cardio crazy, but the cardio is not crazy about everybody else. It's not working, something's wrong. So another one of my famous diagrams here, but this just kind of sums up what's happening here. So sympathetic nervous system, most of us are in this dominant state where we're always up here. Our sympathetic nervous system is not a bad thing. The trouble we get in is when we get stuck up here with all this stress. We have less digestion, elimination, increased cortisol, increased catabolic, breaking down tissues. Now, on the other hand, if you're thinking, well, then I just want to be down here in the parasympathetic nervous system, that's the opposite to this guy. We have better digestion, we have repair and recovery of our bodies and of our minds, we have energy building, increased fat burning, muscle building hormones. But then why are the people who are the couch potatoes of the world, who the only exercise they get is one thumb on the remote and the other one lifting the 12 ounce to their mouth, not lean and fit and any healthier? Well, because we also have problems when we're stuck down here all the time too. Because we get stuck where energy gets stagnant in our bodies and we're not effectively moving it, and we're not burning anything. So really what we're looking for is a balance. We have brief periods, remember, brief periods of stress are what our bodies are designed to handle. So we have brief periods where we're up here, followed by brief periods down here, we enter what is called the power zone, where we have a balance of what I've identified as the four main stressors: nutritional, mental, emotional, and physical. And once we're in there, you're going to have the ideal metabolic efficiency. Your weight's going to be where you want it to be. You're going to feel better, not only look better, you're going to be healthier. And you'd be surprised how the aches and pains and all those stresses start to resolve themselves pretty significantly. So in identifying, how do you know if you've got too much stress going on? Like I said, we've got it all the time, right? There's certain stressors that we have to deal with as a part of everyday life, but we're going to focus on the ones that we can do something about. But we need to understand how stress is affecting us. So something you may not have heard before is called physiological load. So physiological load, what is it? It's basically the cumulative effect that all stressors have on you. So again, there's 4 different categories. I talk about these a lot in my book: mental stress, emotional stress, nutritional stress, and physical stress. If you had taken every kind of stress we can identify and just had it all out there, and you can have like this funnel. You have a funnel that would all these stressors come in, they would go into one of these categories: mental, emotional, physical, and nutritional. So when you're looking at mental stress, you're trying to identify how many of these that you're constantly dealing with. The more that you're dealing with, the higher it contributes to your overall physiological load. Now, the higher your physiological load is, the less tolerance you're going to have to exercise. So what we have, remember, especially with stress management programs, weight management programs, everyone touting, you got to eat right and exercise. Eat right, we want low-calorie diets, we want all this restriction going on, watch your carbs, watch your fat, and do all this exercise. But the more stress that we're taking on, the higher this physiological load gets, the last thing that we're going to need is more exercise. You've got to be very careful. So all of these are not by any means an extensive list, but this is enough to give you an idea. Restless mind, increased creativity. If you feel rushed, your memory's getting worse, constantly have bad dreams, jumbled thoughts, or poor sleep. You're taking on a lot of mental stress the more of these that you have. So the second one, emotional stress. By the way, mental stress has to do with our thoughts. Emotional stress has to do with our feelings. And I'm going to show you guys in a little bit. If you're wondering, well, how does all this have anything to do with my weight and what I'm thinking, I'm going to show you some startling research in just a little bit that's probably going to shock you pretty good. Because what you think absolutely influences how you look. And what you think drives your feelings. It drives our emotions. So anything like nervousness, anxiety, fear, depression, sadness, mood swings, overwhelm, muscle and joint pain, you'll see this one come up a few times. Muscle and joint pain definitely as a result of this. Again, it's not because we have bad knees and bad backs all the time, but kind of what is the underlying reason that's causing it. So then we have our nutritional stress, and everybody knows that has to do with food. Yes, don't yell all at once. So we've got food, so anything like our poor digestion, inflammation, constipation, food does not energize you. If you eat something and you feel like you want to take a nap, or on the other end, if you feel like you want to jump out of your skin right away, very few times do we understand the effect that food's having on us. If you crave caffeine and stimulants, if you crave sweets, and hydration levels as well. Hydration is such an interesting thing, and it's so underestimated for most of us. But research, the American Council on Exercise did research on this. What they find is that the majority of people only put back about 50% of the water that they lose per day. And when you consider that all of the cells of your body, the second most important nutrient is water. And it's not the most important because you can live longer without water than you can without breathing. So oxygen is our number one, but without hydration, the cells in your body can't work, and the cells that produce hormones that help you burn fat get affected very negatively. As little as 1% dehydration will drastically decrease performance, and it'll affect your weight. And our last one, physical stressors have to do with activity. So if you're not getting enough exercise, if you're getting too much exercise, again, muscle and joint pain. This one's pretty interesting, improper breathing. You're going, okay, that's kind of airy-fairy stuff, what's going on with that? The thing with breathing is really interesting. When you are really stressed out, are you breathing nice and deep and relaxed into your belly? No, you're probably gripping because we're really tight. We've got so much tension. When we've got tension in our muscles, we can't properly expand the diaphragm. Everything gets locked up, so we breathe really shallow. The important thing about breathing is that when we breathe properly, it helps to open up and extend the spinal column. And what it does is it activates a pump of cerebrospinal fluid. So that's a fluid that goes through the spinal column and up into our brain and supplies oxygen and nutrients to our brain. And when we're not breathing properly, we fail to activate the cerebrospinal fluid pump. And if you probably start to draw the conclusion now, you get less oxygen and nutrients to your brain, and also you're getting less waste removal from your brain. So definitely can affect memory, lack of oxygen to the brain, stroke, things like that. Rapid aging, increased sickness, colds, allergies, flu-like symptoms can be all the result of this stuff. So again, when you take into account all of these four areas, the more of these that you're taking on, the higher that physiological load and the less tolerance you're going to have to an exercise program. So one of the things that we have to look at, 12 so-called healthy foods, and I bring this up because when I was doing personal training, all of the years I was doing it, I'll never forget that the majority of clients that came to see me for weight loss, when I would ask them, you know, what's going on, what do you want to do, what do you need most, why are you not losing weight, what do you think? They would talk about how they needed a better workout program or their workouts weren't working. And when I asked them about their nutrition, most of them would tell me, I don't need any help with that, I know how to eat healthy, I know what it's all about, I know what to do. But what you may not know is that there's these 12 so-called healthy foods. It's not the fault of anybody in particular, but more of what the information is that we're being told. Doctors, dietitians, you know, in the media, fitness experts everywhere are telling us to eat these so-called healthy foods, but eating these foods are actually causing more problems than we think. So the top two on the list, I think everybody, that's no surprise, you all know that, processed foods and sugar are at the top of the list there. Stimulants as well, all our caffeine and energy drinks and all of those things. But number 4, how many of you think whole grain and multi-grain and whole wheat products are supposed to be healthy? Well, for most people, it's a pretty big problem. One of the biggest problems is because they don't contain as many nutrients as we've been led to believe. And in fact, during the times like World War II and everything, when the soldiers were starving and needed food, or other countries were needing food for their soldiers, they actually would not accept any grains that came from the United States. They would take it from any other country, but not from the United States, because they were so deficient in nutrients. And not only that, everybody knows about gluten, but most people don't understand the symptoms that they get due to gluten intolerance. They know about it, but all of these fun symptoms like abdominal bloating and inflammation and cramping and constipation, gas, headaches, fatigue, memory problems, and a whole host of other negative side effects usually aren't figured out until it's way too late. So that's one of the things. And then something called phytic acid that's present in the coating of nuts and seeds and in a lot of grains. But phytic acid is a mineral blocker. So if we're not getting enough nutrients, vitamins and minerals from the foods that we're eating, they're not actually they're going in our stomach, but they're not getting absorbed and assimilated into the tissues and the cells that we need. So there's a problem with that. Malnourishment, we're going to have weight problems, we're going to have health problems, energy problems, all of it. Conventional dairy, milk does not do a body good. The process of homogenization and pasteurization just basically is killing whatever nutrition may have been in that milk to begin with, let alone the hormones and antibiotics that are being given to cows. What they were doing was giving cows these growth hormone injections to get them to produce milk for longer periods of time and larger quantities of milk. So from a production standpoint, that's great for the companies, but from the standpoint of the animal, it stresses them out so badly that up to 80%, we found out research, 80% of these cows are susceptible to cancer of the udder and to infections. What's that? Soy is about one of the, unless you get fermented soy, soy is one of the worst things. It's been shown to cause reproductive harm in women, and it's been shown to cause problems with men as well, in terms of sexual reproduction and things like that as well. It's one of the worst things to give your kids too. I could talk forever on soy, but we're too lost here. But basically, the growth hormone that's given to the cows, and then when the cows got really stressed out or they had any kind of sickness going on, then they get the antibiotic injections so that the milk that they're producing or the cheese or whatever can make it into your grocery store. And the problem with it is that whatever goes into the cow goes into the milk supply, and whatever goes into the milk supply goes into you and your kids, your family. And also, I know a lot, especially females who drink a lot of milk because they're concerned about calcium and osteoporosis. And actually, up to about 50% of the calcium in milk is actually unusable by the body. And the protein's pretty damaged and the fats are damaged too. So it's just kind of dead. Pretty dead product. Conventional meats, again, same problems with antibiotics, with hormones, with what the animals are fed. That's the biggest problem with the meats. If you're going to get conventional meats, I always tell people, it's not like you can never eat it. Sometimes it's the only thing that's accessible, but do your best to get leaner cuts if it's conventional meat, and if possible, grill the meat, because animals, just like humans, we store toxins in our fat cells, and so do animals. So when you grill it, you can kind of burn some of that off and leach some of that stuff out. Then frozen foods. Particularly the ones that are healthier kind of options are low calorie, low fat. They're marketed as healthy. They're definitely convenient. This is one of the worst offenders you can put in your body because frozen foods, number one, they are so highly processed. And when you process a food, so I have it way up there, you basically strip it and take all the nutrition out of it. Whatever little tiny bit of nutrition might be left in that frozen food is bound together by chemicals and additives that your body's not meant to digest. And if your body can't break these things down and you got nutrients that are bound up within it, they're going to go in one end and right out the other. It's also very overloading for your liver to deal with toxins like that. And one of the last things is how do most people prepare the frozen foods? How do they cook them? Microwave, right? So did you know that up to 90% of the nutrition in any kind of food is gone once you microwave it, destroys it? Microwave food, for the most part, is just unrecognizable. The food gets unrecognizable by your body. 3 strikes. Prepackaged foods, obviously, the nice, convenient dinner for 2. Just pop it in the microwave. We've got instant dinners. Reduced calorie, reduced fat, low fat, fat-free. Basically, if you take calories, the process of reducing calories and fats and things like that, the whole processing of it just basically strips the nutrition down anyway. So you're better off getting full-fat versions of your foods, regardless of what you've been told. We love corn tortillas because my wife's family is always making things, and we have corn tortillas. We do eat them, but they're not the best. I don't think they're the worst thing either. But if you're going to eat them, look for the labels, because if you look at labels like the ingredient labels, some of them have very long lists, even on corn tortillas, and some of them have very short lists, and you can actually pronounce the names. So you're better off getting the short list as best you can. All right, is anybody like not making sense, or anybody have questions? Or
what do you replace them with?
Whole grain, multi-grain, whole wheat, anything but for the most part. Yeah, you can actually rice. You can actually use some rice, but I think you have to be. Most people have to be careful with carbohydrate consumption as well. You know, we need them, but we don't all need the same amount, and we, for the most part, have very limited storage capacity for carbohydrates. So we just got to be very careful with it. But rice typically doesn't have any gluten or any of this. Yeah, Ezekiel is one of the best brands you can get. Yeah, if you're going to get a grain, look for a sprouted grain bread, because when they sprout the grains, then they'll break up the phytic acid. Okay? But you have to make sure that it's gluten-free as well. So if you're intolerant, now the majority of people are intolerant to it, but there are a small percentage who can eat whole wheat stuff and they feel fine. They don't have any effects of it. Yeah. So, but the way you know, most people they think they're tolerant of it because they never feel anything to their knowledge. So the best way to find out if you're gluten intolerant, remove anything containing gluten. And I'm going to tell you, don't be surprised if it's half the things in your cupboards and fridge at home. They're going to be bare because it's in everything. Completely remove gluten for at least 5 days. And then try a piece of the bread or something back, one piece, and watch what happens. Because you start to become very sensitive to things you may not have noticed before. I was working with a company. Anybody know Taylor Farms out in Tracy? I was working with them in a weight loss program, and we were doing a nutrition thing. And one of the things that we talked about was caffeine. We were trying to get rid of caffeine. And there was some of the people had no problem coming off the caffeine, but there were others who were telling me that they go, oh my God, their head was pounding, their bodies were just killing them. Like they couldn't figure out what was going on, but they never realized it was the caffeine because they never felt that before. And we took it all out. We were going through all this withdrawal and everything, and actually had to talk with them about putting them on kind of a caffeine reduction plan because it was so serious coming off the stuff. All right, so here's some statistics. These are the ones that you usually don't hear about. 100 years ago, the average yearly intake of sugar was only 4 pounds per person. Compare that to today, the average American consumes about 160 pounds of sugar per year. That is per person. The United States and England are the worst. You may not know, sugar is actually a class 1 drug, classified drug, but it's legal. And it's classified drug because of the addictive properties of it. 1 teaspoon of sugar suppresses the immune system for 4 to 6 hours. 1 teaspoon. How many teaspoons of sugar? Anybody know in a can of cola? 13? Yeah. Multiply that by a 5-hour average and look how long you're suppressing your immune system for. I can't recall the last time I saw a commercial for Open Up a Can of Happiness that told me that. There are about 10 to 15,000 food additives and chemicals that are deliberately added to our food supply. And the average American consumes approximately 150 pounds of additives per year. That's crazy stuff. All right, so let's talk a little bit about inflammation, weight gain, and chronic pain. They're all tied up into. Anybody hear of this leaky gut syndrome? Doesn't that sound nasty? It's like worse than bringing your car in for an oil leak. Leaky gut syndrome, what happens with this is, if this is the lining of your digestive tract, right? It's just all lined with cells. Everything in our body is cells. And the cells that make up your digestive tract, if you imagine them, they're all kind of tightly bound together, okay? And what happens if we eat foods that our body doesn't deal well with, can't process properly, over time, it starts to weaken the junctions of the cells. So the cells, where they were bound really tight, well, they start to get permeable. So these undigested food particles make their way through those cells and directly into the bloodstream before they're ready to be digested. So they're floating around in the bloodstream, and your body can only produce so much immune complexes to go and engulf these things and deal with them. When you're constantly doing this, it just outnumbers it. And a lot of these food particles, when they embed themselves, they get embedded in joint tissue, in muscle tissue, and in nerve tissue. Muscle and joint pain, inflammation, right? Joint issues, things like that. So what happens is your body then goes and sends out like these killer enzymes. So these killer enzymes go and they're on the seek and destroy mission to go find the offenders. Well, imagine if I had like a breadcrumb and I put the breadcrumb on the floor and I wanted to get rid of it. The easiest thing for me to do would be to pick it up and then get rid of it. But what if I took a big bazooka and I launched it, boom, right into the floor at the breadcrumb? I'd kill that breadcrumb, I'd take it out, but I'd take out a lot of the floor with it. And that's what starts to happen with the killer enzymes. They seek and destroy. They not only get the offending food particles, but they do a lot of damage to the muscle tissue, to the joint tissue, to your nerve tissue in the process. And when it goes on and on and on, a lot of those aches and pains that we just attribute to old age are actually due to what we're putting in our stomachs. Another thing, visceral autonomic inhibition. This is basically having to do with viscera, so our internal organs, automatic inhibition. So the easiest way I can try to explain it is that our organs and our muscles, in certain areas of the body, they share common nerve fibers, like pain receptors from nerves. They share it. They're in the same nerve loop. So if we have an organ that is in pain, then what's going to happen is the muscle is going to behave the same way, and vice versa. Because what happens, like if you look at the stomach area, right, our abdominal wall, in our digestive system, if you have something that's inflaming your intestinal tract, well, you can see that the connection, that the nerve fibers are all shared. So what happens when we feel pain, we don't feel pain until it's significant enough that the signal transmits to the area of the spine, and then it travels all the way up into the brain where it's recognized, and our brain basically interprets it as, hey, something's hurting here. The problem is that your brain doesn't know if it's the muscle or the organ that's in pain. So when it has to make a decision, it's got to heal something up and fix something, and it has to basically shut something down to do it. And if your brain has a decision to make between a muscle and an organ, your muscles are a slave system to your organs, because you can live without the function of a lot of muscles, but you can't live without the digestive system. You can't try and live without a liver. Right? Things like that, so it'll shut that down. To the next slide. So, how many people, when they want to lose weight, what is the most common exercise they're doing? Abdominal exercise. I want my tummy to go down. I want to burn fat. Well, the point that I'm trying to make with all of this is that if we're eating foods, even so-called healthy foods, that are constantly inflaming our digestive system, they're going to shut that abdominal wall down. No matter how many crunches you do, nothing's going to burn off. And on top of that, think of how many people suffer from low back pain at some point in your life. 80%, at least 80%. And one of the things that's always recommended when you have back pain is to strengthen your stomach muscles, right? Strengthen the core. How are you going to strengthen the core if your brain's shutting it down because you're inflamed with the stuff that you're eating all the time? So we look at the stress-exercise continuum. Like I said before, the more stressed you are, the less tolerance you have for exercise. We tend to take a backwards approach to that, right? Because when we're thinking about losing weight and getting healthy, we keep thinking we have to do more exercise. We have to get stricter with our diets. What we're failing to realize is our physiological load. It's not, more is not always better. People think they need more to relieve stress. We talked about that. Everything we experience, good or bad, stress, it accumulates within us. Feel better in the short term, but worse in the long term. You know, if you've ever had one of those days, you're just like, at the end of the day, you're so frustrated, you just want to go to the gym and just pound out a big workout. And you go through that workout, you just feel like that endorphin rush, you feel good. And that's where a lot of people can get actually addicted to exercise. They get addicted to that feeling as a way to try to relieve stress. So over the short term, we feel really, really good. The problem is by the next day, that stress is right back there. And there's only so many times you can pound your body in the gym like that without enough recovery. Put it to you this way, if you add stress on top of stress on top of stress to a system that's completely stressed out, is it going to build it up or break it down? It's going to break down. The other thing is stress uses more energy. Right? We have a lot more tension, it's using a lot more energy, it depletes us of magnesium, depletes us of vitamin C and a lot of minerals in our body. And basically, you cannot spend what you don't have. How much do you have in your stress account? It's kind of like a bank account. If you spend $5,000 every month, but you only put $1,000 back in, how long is it going to take before the next time you swipe the credit card at the register, they go, denied, because you have nothing left to spend. And it's the same thing with our bodies. We can get away with it for a period of time, but when you keep doing it, you're going to run out of energy to spend. You break it down. So another concern that we have is cholesterol levels. People are running around high cholesterols and getting told to take all these drugs and statins and things like that. So there's some interesting facts that I want to talk about with high cholesterol. Cholesterol functions as an antioxidant in our body, and it actually supports our immune system. 70% of the lining in our intestinal tract is basically our immune system. It's tied directly to it. And the cells are produced by cholesterol. Cholesterol provides the building blocks for our cells and for certain hormones in our bodies. A lot of times, we don't hear about things like this. Instead, we're being told to take drugs and medications to treat cholesterol, but cholesterol is really just a symptom. Would it be more effective to take a drug and alleviate the symptom, but we'd have to take the drug forever because as soon as we come off it, the symptoms come back? What if we could identify what was causing the symptom in the first place? So why are your cholesterol levels high? Well, when's the last time that you've been told that cholesterol is actually needed to build cells of your body? So if our cells are always dying and being replenished and dying and being rebuilt, we have like a new body all the time. We never have the same body that we did when we were born, always regenerating new cells. Well, if we have something like a compromised immune system, where our body's having to rebuild a lot of cells because there's a lot of damage going on in there, cholesterol is the building blocks of the cells. Our cholesterol levels can be high because of it. Damage to the arteries. You know, we look at things like atherosclerosis, right, where the plaque deposits get plaquettes deposited in the arteries. It's made of cholesterol, and the artery walls get more narrow and narrow, restricts blood supply, and then heart attacks and all this stuff starts happening. And we start to hear about, well, you should reduce your cholesterol. Right? Make sure, among other things, don't eat cholesterol. Well, remember, cholesterol is just a symptom of something going on. A lot of times, the very things that we're eating and putting in our bodies are the things that are causing damage to the arteries in the first place. And all our bodies are doing is trying to use cholesterol, much like we do a Band-Aid on a cut on our finger, just to patch it up. Damaged cardiovascular system. Sometimes too much exercise. Like I said, your cortisol level, your cholesterol levels can actually be elevated because your body's trying to rebuild your cardiovascular system cells. So you hear about a million things, but when's the last time you heard too much stress can possibly be elevating your cholesterol levels? Pregnenolone steal. This has nothing to do with like pregnancy or stealing babies or anything like this. Okay? What this has to do with, it follows right along with cholesterol. Cholesterol is used to manufacture a lot of hormones in our body, and basically it's converted into pregnenolone. So pregnenolone is used to build our anabolic hormones, our rest and recovery ones, and our catabolic hormones. So every time we experience stress, pregnenolone is producing cortisol and all of our adrenal hormones and things that are going on there. So what happens is when we're constantly in this sympathetic nervous system dominant state, we've got stress going on and on and on, something called a pregnenolone steal starts to happen where instead of pregnenolone being used to also build your anabolic recovery hormones, you got so much stress going on, it's basically stolen to keep producing cortisol and stress hormones. And on it goes. So getting into what I talked about earlier, you are not only what you eat, but you are what you think as well. Remember I talked about your thoughts drive your emotions, and your emotions actually influence your physiology. So in 1991, the Institute of Heart Math was formed. So what they did, they explored the power that human feelings have over the body and all this, and they did this study between 1992 and 1995. And what they did in this study was basically they took human DNA and they extracted it and they separated it from people that they got it from. And so they isolated it and they had all this technology and everything hooked up. And so they put the DNA in one room and they put the people in the other room. And what they did was they showed video clips to the people. And the video clips were just designed to invoke different emotional states. And what they found was that at the exact same time that the person changed their emotional states, their DNA changed shape as well. Completely isolated. So they found evidence that human emotion, our emotions can actually affect the whole shape of our DNA. It's not really written in stone in our DNA like we think it is. Next one. So then there was a study in Italy done, and basically what they did with this one is they wanted to see these patients who were having symptoms, and they wanted to raise their dopamine levels because the dopamine levels would eliminate the symptoms or alleviate them that they had. But the drugs that they were being given only lasted 60 minutes. So what they did in an experiment was they gave these patients just a simple saline kind of solution, and it should have done nothing, caused no reaction whatsoever. But what they found was that the patients, their behavior and their dopamine levels rose and their symptoms were alleviated the same way as it happened with the drug, but they weren't getting the drug. So this was one of the first things that they had found with the power of belief and emotions has. And this study was actually confirmed. It validated another study that they did in British Columbia and Vancouver. So very interesting. Go ahead. And that was in the book, The Spontaneous Power of Healing Belief by Greg Reagan. So drugs, the magic bullet or just the bullet? There's a book by Dr. Greg Forrest, Why We Hurt, complete physical and spiritual guide to healing of chronic pain. This is an excellent, excellent book. Very long. It's a great read. And what they talked about in here, in December 11th, 2003, the worldwide president of genetics at GlaxoSmithKline, this was one of the biggest companies out there. The president said that the vast majority of drugs, more than 90%, only work in 30 to 50% of the people due to differences in genetic individuality and all that. So in other words, the executive of a major drug company is admitting that 9 out of 10 drugs taken do not work in up to 50% of people who take them. So some other statistics, 2.23 million hospitalized patients suffered serious adverse drug reactions causing serious injury, permanent disability, or death in 1994. 106,000 patients died in hospitals from medication reactions in 1994. And again, the stat that we just heard about. There's also a study that was mentioned. This was really interesting. In 1998, this is interesting because medications are prescribed left and right. I'm not trying to dash anything, but just kind of bringing up some research here. But in 1998, they did a study, and what they studied was recent medical school graduates at the time. So they had this exam, and the exam was designed to assess competency in musculoskeletal medicine. So they established a passing rate of 73.1%, and they had 124 program directors in musculoskeletal medicine evaluate the results of the exam. You know what they found? 82% of the medical graduates failed the exam. So they failed to demonstrate competency in musculoskeletal medicine. So So it was even more interesting because the results were really shocking, so they wanted to do this whole study again and ensure that there was accuracy in here. So in 2002, they repeated the study, but this time they had 417 of the top program directors all across the United States evaluate the exam, and they lowered the passing score from 73.1% to 70% for accuracy. You know what they found? 78% of the recent medical graduates failed the exam. What was even more surprising that they found was that these medical graduates, only 2% of their curriculum was devoted to getting education in musculoskeletal medicine. So if you're wondering what 2% is, it's only 2.1 weeks in their entire graduate program. And they also found that 1/3 of all doctors have no education in musculoskeletal medicine. And I bring that up because I find it very surprising and alarming, especially considering that, again, 80% of people at some point in their life experience a significant episode of low back pain. And a lot of times we're getting prescribed medications for the problem. And again, I'm not trying to bash doctors or medicine in general. I think medicine has had some amazing advancements in curing disease and preventing diseases, so it's come a long way, and there's a lot of good that's been done with it. It's just to bring this up because I think that we have to do a lot more than just depending only on our doctors and putting the entire health and well-being of ourselves and our families in their hands. We have to do all we can to gain the education so we can make more informed decisions regarding this. So our catabolic sympathetic nervous system stimulators. Pretty much everything, right? Caffeine and stimulants, alcohol, sugar, processed foods, too much exercise, disrupted sleep, all of these things. Negative thoughts, worrying. Remember I talked about the thoughts. Negative thoughts, they drive your emotions, drives your sympathetic nervous system, and it causes you to retain weight, gain weight, even physical stress with joint pain, job, finances, relationships. All of these things contribute to what's going on here. So, in other words, we can have problems with our job, our finances, our relationships that are actually messing our weight up as well. So, now that I talked about all the gloom and doom and everybody's so happy here, let's talk about the anabolic stimulators. So the other branch of the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, that's basically our stress response system. It helps us recover and rejuvenate. So what we want to do is, we're stressed out, we want to balance that out with our recovery system. So some of the things that we want to do, especially with sleep, it's such a problem for so many of us. You know, we have so much going on, it's hard to get a good night's sleep anymore. Getting to sleep by 10:30, at least 5 nights of the week, you should be asleep by 10:30. And the reason why is because the windows for recovery, according to our biological rhythms, we have between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. That's our recovery window. Now, between the hours of 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is our physical recovery. That's when our body's trying to optimize that. So if we're getting to bed at like 11:30, 12 o'clock, 1 a.m., and we have just that window until 2 to recover physically, and we're not doing it, shortchanging it. So imagine the wear and tear that starts to happen on the body when we can't recover. Between the hours of 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. is our mental recovery. So if you've ever had problems like waking up at 3 in the morning and you can't sleep, and like 5:30 rolls around and you just conk out, man, the alarm goes off at 6, how well are you thinking that day? I mean, there's a reason why. So we want to dim the bright lights in the house, typically at least 2 hours before bedtime. If you have candles, light them. Dim as much of the bright lights as you possibly can. Be careful about watching, reading, or listening to anything that's negative or causing fear, or even violence-based things prior to bedtime especially. Because when you're trying to go to sleep, the last thing you want is all of the fear-based programming and all this crazy stuff running through your head when you're trying to get a good night's sleep. Right? Even exercise. Being careful about if you're exercising later on at night, because again, exercise drives the sympathetic nervous system, and it's got an active life of about 1.5 hours to 2 hours, so that system is being driven. So you don't want it to affect your sleep. Eating for your metabolic profile. I could talk about that for like hours as well, but I wrote about it in my book, The Stress-Free Diet. Basically, if you've ever read the book, The Metabolic Typing Diet, there was extensive research done by Dr. Weston A. Price, who basically traveled the world and found all of these different tribes in remote areas of the world who were some of the healthiest, most vibrant people. They were free of the cancers and diabetes and all these diseases that we know. And they were free of all of these diseases despite eating so many different types of diets. You had Eskimo tribes that are existing on like 80% fat in their diet and protein. No kidding. And then you have other tribes who are existing on 70% plus carbohydrates. And they're some of the leanest, no obesity, some of the healthiest populations in the world. So what they found was, through all their research, was that basically we're all so different in how we process foods. That's why there's no one-size-fits-all diet that will work for everyone. Case in point, look at low-carb diets, for example. They work really well for some people. Do you ever wonder why, like, if you've known somebody who's lost all this weight and they feel great and they're jumping through the moon, oh, you've got to try this diet, a low-carb diet. And then the friend tries it, and they're like, what are you talking about? I'm miserable, I barely lost weight, I feel weak and horrible all the time. That's what goes on, right? We have our own metabolic profile based on what our bodies are designed to do, and it really traces back to our heritage. So I wrote all about it in the book. Drink plenty of water. So our water supply, it's very polluted, but you really want to get some fresh, clean water. So things like Fiji water, artesian waters are really good. Detel is another one. Some of the plain waters, if you have just regular water. And the big thing is, like, people tell me, oh, you know, I drink plenty of water. Well, how do you know you drink plenty of water? Well, because I'm going to the bathroom all the time. And that means that it's cleansing my system out. Well, I hate to say this, but it doesn't mean it's cleansing your system. It means your body's not absorbing the water you're putting in it. It's going in one end and right out the other. So if you find that you're running to the bathroom a lot more than normal, try a pinch of unprocessed, unrefined sea salt. Put it in there. You don't have to make it taste salty. Don't do that. But it should be just enough to mineralize the water and to help your body actually absorb it. General guideline for water is to drink, this is minimum. It's going to sound like I'm nuts, but you drink half of your body weight in ounces of water every day. Half your body weight in ounces. That's a minimum. And the more that you work out, or the more of a hotter temperature that you're running around in during your day, the more water you're going to need. All right, go ahead. I already went through that, but exercise and stress. So here's some signs and symptoms. Again, you know, we tend to think that we need more exercise all the time, but we can't forget that exercise, even though it's quote-unquote healthy, it can be unhealthy as well. It's a form of stress. And like anything else, if we do too much of it, be counterproductive and actually hold you back from losing weight. Have you ever noticed, you go to the gym, and how many of you have gym memberships? Yeah, everybody. So, do you know at least one person in the gym who, like, you know, like, every time you go there, they're there, and they're working out, and you wonder, you've ever gotten to the point where you wondered if they ever live, like, at a home? Because they're always there, right?
Yes.
And they're doing all this activity all the time. But if you think about that person or those people, ask yourself really quickly, how significantly has their bodies changed in the past 3 months? Or the past 6 months? About the past year? You've seen that. The chances are they really don't change a whole lot, right? And some of them are following pretty strict diets. Well, if they're doing all of that, and what we're always told is that you got to burn more calories than you eat to lose weight and change, well, nothing's happening. Here's why. So, increased heart rate and or blood pressure. These are signs that exercise is causing you too much stress. You might be overdoing it on exercise. If you have increased heart rate or blood pressure, that's one of the things. Again, you know, with blood pressure and all the things going on, we're always trying to treat the symptoms with medications without looking at what are the underlying possible causes that could be causing things like this. It's simply, a lot of times, too much stress. Increased mental, physical, or emotional fatigue. Sickness and infection, poor quality of sleep, decreased desire to exercise, decreased performance, poor recovery from your exercise, decreased strength or stamina, irritability, and mood swings. So this brings up the difference between working out and something I'll call working in. Because we always, when we think about exercise, we always associate it with a loss of energy, right? We're working energy out of our body, so we call it working out. Well, when you deplete more energy than you have, over the short term you can get away with it and not experience too many bad things that happen. But again, if you're doing this too often and you're significantly spending more energy than you have, you create an imbalance in your physiological system. Your body starts to experience this as too much stress. So your body doesn't know that you're just working out like a maniac trying to lose some weight. Your body's perceiving basically that, whoa, I'm not getting enough energy back in, and I'm going to hang on to everything I got with dear life. So you get these cardioholics in the gym that are working out, running 5 miles or running on the treadmill for 2 hours, 6 or 7 days a week, and their bodies refuse to change. And the stricter that we diet and the harder we exercise, nothing changes. So what was going on with me back in the day, I couldn't figure out, why am I working out 6 days a week, 90 minutes a day, beating myself up, and I'm barely hanging on to the results that I got. And it wasn't making sense. And that's what starts to happen. Oops. So, the truth about cardio, again, cardio is the most popular form of exercise. You know, nothing really against it so much in and of itself, other than how it's being applied. And again, I don't fault people for it, because we're doing what we hear about it. You got to do cardio 3 to 5 days a week in your fat burning zone. This is causing more problems than ever, because cardio, why people aren't getting results when they're doing so much of it, it's catabolic activity. Remember the picture of the marathon runner? Think of most marathon runners. They log so many miles in, and we look at them and go, man, I'd love to be in that kind of shape. Yeah, they're in great shape in terms of their endurance capacity, but when you look at them, they're constantly breaking down. They don't have enough recovery, typically. Sometimes their nutrition's nowhere near enough of what they need. And they have a lot of aches and pains. Running injuries are so common nowadays. We tend to think running's bad, or I got bad knees. Well, it's not the running, it's not your knees as much as just how we're applying this cardiovascular activity. Then what happens is cardiovascular activity, for the most part, is most effective in the initial weeks that we start doing it. Anytime we do a new activity, our body's going to respond pretty favorably. We're burning some energy because we're putting a stimulus on our body it's not used to. But what happens within just a few weeks is our bodies are very sophisticated machines, and they know how to adapt to what we do when we do the same thing over and over. And because cardio is typically so repetitive, same movements done, same muscles used over and over and over, our bodies start to expend less energy over time. That's why you get to the point where you have to either go longer, go harder, or add more and more days, but sooner or later you're going to hit the wall with what you can do and what you can recover from. And what that leads to, when you're using the same muscles and the same movement patterns over and over and over, those muscles get strong and they get tight, but other muscles that aren't getting any work get loose and they get weak. So you start creating these imbalances that causes repetitive stress type injuries and chronic pain. So again, you add stress to a system that's overstressed, which results in overload and breakdown. So when we think about working in, remember I talked about the higher your physiological load, the less tolerance for exercise you have. So if you have a pretty high physiological load, you're probably thinking, well, what can I do? Oh, that doesn't mean that you don't need to exercise at all. You're thinking, I get to lay on the couch. I like this stress thing. Well, the difference is what type of exercise that we're doing. So rather than just working out all the time, we need something that's going to build more energy in than it's going to expend. And that's where we get an energy-building exercise. So again, this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but it gives you some idea of what you can do. Energy-building exercise is typically anything that you can do comfortably where you're moving that doesn't cause you to breathe really hard or rapidly. You're not exerting a whole lot. It's very low-level activity. So you can have like yoga, tai chi, qigong, even massage, because they're loosening up adhesions and muscle tightness and allowing more energy and blood flow and transportation of oxygen and nutrients. Deep breathing exercises, like I talked about already. Every time you breathe, you're transporting oxygen and nutrients through the tissues of your body, and you're exchanging it with getting waste and flushing all the waste products out of the muscle cells as well. Stretching as well. These are just some of the things that you can do. All right, so diet and exercise tips to reduce stress and transform core metabolism. So again, if you have a high physiological load, some things you can do. Reduce the frequency. That has to do with how often you exercise. Reduce the frequency of working out. Reduce the intensity, how hard you're working. Bring it down. Or reduce the length of the exercise sessions, how long you're exercising. It could be one of those, it could be all of those. Just depends where you're at. Perform the energy-building exercises. Eliminate all forms of caffeine and stimulants, because that drives the whole sympathetic nervous system. Eliminate processed foods and sugar. And yeah, that's all the fun stuff. What's left for me to eat? Our stress reduction checklist, again, eat the right foods for your metabolic profile. Again, we all are very different. What works for one person can literally make another person sick. We all need carbs and protein and fat and vitamins and minerals, but we do not all need the same amounts. Avoid caffeine and stimulants, particularly after lunch. They have a very long half-life of about 6 hours. So if you have that 3 o'clock cup of coffee because you're hitting that crash, well, that's going to be activating you until at least 9 o'clock, so you might have trouble sleeping. Know the difference between hunger and dehydration. Most of the time, people are running around thinking that we're hungry, and we're really dehydrated. It starts to happen if you eat something, and within like 30 minutes you ate a good meal and you feel hungry, you're not hungry. It's mostly you're just dehydrated. And if you reach the point where you're already thirsty, like I am now, you're already dehydrated. So you got to get water. Balance working out with working in. Get to bed by at least 10:30, at least 5 nights per week. Avoid the TV shows that promote all the garbage that I talked about. Identify specific stressors. Make a plan to reduce them. So going through your physiological load list, if you're really high on the nutritional stressors, but not so much the mental stressors. Make a plan. You know that that's your area that you've got to work on most, so start making a plan to reduce them. Stress reduction audio programs, courses, and books like, hey, the stress-free diet. Yeah, I'm biased on that. It's much love. Anyway, and burn your diet books. We don't need another diet, you guys. We really don't. Diet and exercise programs are all over the place. A lot of them are just repackaged, same old info that was out, years before. It's funny because if you look on, I looked on Google not too long ago, and I looked for the term fat loss just to see how many results come back. 139 million results come back. Like, we got all this information everywhere, and yet we're like drowning in a sea of knowledge without any real way to apply it. We just don't know what to do. And that's our checklist. Real quickly, and that's my book. So I didn't bring anything with me or anything like that. If you're interested, I go a lot more into detail about everything I talked about tonight, metabolic profiling, all the mental, emotional stress, and really deep with the principles in it. And really by following this book, this was the whole thing that I've worked for the last 12 years on, just building it and building it into this. And I can honestly say, you follow the principles in that book. It's a very short read. It will change your body, change your health, and change your life in as little as 28 days. What's that? Yeah, it's available in hard copy and on Kindle. Yeah, so you can find it on Amazon. Passes around to this information on that, and that's about it. And if anybody knows anybody, I do work with companies and organizations who are looking for stress and weight management programs, educational programs, seminars, workshops. I'm always available and more than happy to do that. Any questions before we wind up?
What's your thought on supplements?
Like what kind? In general?
Well, let's see. The calcium supplements, the multivitamins. Not multivitamins. Well, yeah, those two. The things that are supposed to replace what we're not getting.
Yeah. With any kind of supplement, the main thing that I'll tell people is to make sure that it's a whole food-based supplement. So if anything is synthetic, your body's not going to absorb it. So it's, it may not harm you so much, but it's very expensive for it to go in one end and out the other and not benefit you anyway. So whole food-based supplement is what you want, number one. And, with calcium, green leafy vegetables are a way to get that in really easily, and it's they're whole food. So if you're making it yourself, your body's going to absorb that and extract nutrients from that a lot better than it will with a supplement. Supplement's just basically meant to be that, a supplement, right? Not in place of anything in your diet, but just to add to a diet. So
when you're deficient in B, and you're deficient in D, and you're deficient in what's the other ones? The helps with your of course. Those kind of supplements, do those also have to be
anything, for your body to be able to use it. Our body's only really meant to design to take in nutrients from foods that it recognizes. So if we put something synthetic in there, it's not going to properly absorb it.
Do you recommend a particular brand or place to find unprocessed, unrefined sea salt?
find anything. I found some nice pretty packaging, but nothing that was there. I had to take a trip all the way out to Whole Foods in San Ramon. They have a lot of them over there. One brand that's really good is Celtic Sea Salt, CELTIC. Is a really good brand. There's also real salt. And you'll notice difference, like real salt, it's kind of pinkish a little bit, right? Very different. You can also order the Celtic sea salt. You can order online. So it's a little bit more pricey, but we don't use a lot of salt, and one little thing of it lasts us forever.
So the pink Trader Joe's salt is really
Yeah, it's got to say on there, unprocessed, unrefined. I mean, it's got to say somewhere on there that it is that. If it's not, don't assume that it is. Because all these things that we hear about the dangers of salt and all the problems with blood pressure and everything, the only studies that they've done on that were with the processed table salt. So the unrefined, unprocessed sea salt is actually really beneficial for you. It'll help stabilize all of your blood sugar levels, help the immune system and all of that, and balance you out. It's not a heart attack scare thing or anything like that. It won't cause anything.
Like on your, say like your white sugar that so many use in coffee, is honey better than the sugar?
If you get a conventional honey, no, it's pretty much the same thing. If you get honey, you want to get a real honey, and you'll know that it's real because it'll have like the chunk of beeswax in it, and you can't see through it. It shouldn't be clear. So it's like real thick, kind of murky looking stuff. But even with that, you want to just use it like very, very little because it still is sugar, and they'll still drive the whole sympathetic nervous system and all that if you have too much of it. So. But yeah, if you get that, I would take that over table sugar.
What about stevia?
Stevia? Yeah, it's an herb that's so far so good with it. There's no blood sugar imbalances or anything like that happen from it apparently, as far as all the research shows. Pretty good stuff. Very powerful though. It's like nearly 1,000 times sweeter than sugar.
Yeah.
Very, very little.
What about frozen vegetables versus fresh?
Yeah, I kind of get caught in that sometimes too. They're typically not. If you get them fresh as much as you can. Anything that, the more that it's touched and processed by machines and things, the more denatured it's going to be. And and that brings up the whole thing with genetically modified organisms, GMOs, and all that stuff that they're putting out there too. You got to really be careful what you're looking at. So as much organic as you can get, but even with the organics, you got to be very careful because the labels get tricky now. They know what you're looking for. So anything that's like made with organic ingredients, that just means that maybe they have something that's only like 40 or 50% organic's been put in there, and all the rest to be whatever. So you want to look for like USDA certified 100% organic. I think it's getting to the point where money's getting involved and people are starting to buy those labels. So it's getting really scary with what are we really getting? But so far, it's probably the best thing to get.
What about that Wheaties brand?
Which one?
Wheaties brand?
Oh, Wheaties? Yeah. I've tried that, and so I'm very intolerant to gluten. My mother one day brought down a loaf of whole grain bread and everything, and I knew there was gluten in it. And she was, "Oh, this is so healthy and everything." My 4-year-old daughter, was like, "Dad, I want bread." And so I give her a piece, and I have one piece of it, and within a half an hour, I feel like I'm just ready to fall asleep. My stomach's ballooned out like crazy, and I knew that's what it was. And my daughter's running around, like nothing's wrong with her. I'm like, why do I have this sensitivity? But I'm really highly sensitive to it. But I'll tell you, years ago, I never would have realized it. I never picked up until I started kind of cleaning the system out and everything. And then once I put it back, but the Wheaties bread worked really well for that.
What's your thoughts on coconut water? As far as like I coach over at Manteca High, and I'm trying to get the kids away from the Gatorades with the high fructose corn syrup, and I'm trying to move them to coconut water. And they're crazy. But what are your thoughts?
Is it canned or?
I get it at Trader Joe's. It's not canned. It's in a container. I mean, like cardboard-ish. What's that?
One called, it's called One.
It's not called one, but it's more like in the container. It's not.
Yeah. I mean,
Like the soy milk's come in.
Yeah.
it's probably better than like a soda or something. But I mean,
Still has sugar.
when you can, I would just give them regular water.
Like, I'd like to replenish, I know, because for long distance runners.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in a short-term response, if it was once in a while or something,
Right.
even like a Gatorade, I mean, drink it once in a while or something, it's probably not going to be too big of an issue. But the more chronic it is, yeah, you do have to be careful with, with sensitivity to sugar and things like that. So,
What are your thoughts on that, I think it's a coconut pill or coconut juice for memory or something, I don't remember what it
I haven't
is,
heard
but
of
I
it.
guess somebody was bringing it up the other day that something coconut's supposed to be really good for you.
really, I haven't heard of it. I haven't gotten on that one.
I was just wondering, because I can't stand coconut, was coconut something supposed to be really good for Alzheimer's or something?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is, coconut oil.
Yeah, coconut oil, if you get an organic coconut oil, is good for a lot of things. I mean, you can rub that stuff on your skin. It's definitely a good energy source as well. Same thing, I mean, with yogurts, I go with plain yogurts that are organic, and I mean, a lot of the yogurts, even some of the Greek ones out there, they're still highly pasteurized, processed. The regular yogurts, yeah, it's like eating a candy bar, it's no different. You go with a plain yogurt, organic one, make sure that it's got the probiotics in there. So things like bifidus and acidophilus and those things that are going, because most people that are lactose intolerant, just because of the process of pasteurization, it's killing off the healthy bacteria. It kills off the bad stuff and the good stuff. So the bodies have no way of digesting it, and a lot of those people can tolerate yogurt if it has the right bacteria in there. It helps promote digestion. So things like that, yeah, well, plain yogurt's nasty. The best thing that I really love is if you take that, you just get a whole bunch of it. You get a full fat variety, you don't get any low fat stuff and all that. Fat's not dangerous like we've been told if it comes from the right source. It's really beneficial for us. But get the yogurt and put some cinnamon in there. Get a handful of walnuts and chop up maybe half an apple and try that. And it'll energize you really quickly. It'll sustain you for a long time. It's really good.
Now there's a new diet that one of my coworkers are doing, and it's crazy. She's not eating for 10 days. And she's not. She's drinking this thing with it's got like spices and like honey and syrup and all this stuff, and she's not eating. It's called detox or something like that. That cannot be healthy for you. She's saying, oh, it's so great, whatever. That's not good, right?
Yeah, I mean, 10 days is a long time. I mean, they've done studies with intermittent fasting, just fasting, street fasting people. If you ever read the book Eat, Stop, Eat, it's got all kinds of research in here. But and what they found is intermittent fasting is actually, if you have a healthy body, my take. If you really have an unhealthy body, fasting in and of itself is not going to fix anything. It's going to perpetuate a problem. But they've done a lot of studies on it, and they found that short term, like 24 to as much as 72 hours, it improved blood sugar profiles, insulin sensitivity, it improved growth hormone, it launched it up, so your ability to burn fat, build muscle, it really had some favorable effects on it. But when you go beyond that, if you're doing it frequently, it starts to flip the switch kind of to where you start to get unhealthy responses that happen. So 10 days like that, a lot of these detox diets, I mean, that's what they do. They're just kind of different versions of what you do, different spins on it, but they're not like long-term plans that are going to really build health for you. They're designed over a very short term to give us what we want, which is like immediate weight loss. You sell a lot, but then after 10 days, what happens? You go back to your normal way of eating. Do they teach you what you're supposed to be eating and what's healthy for you? Or they? So I have to be very leery of that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, it depends on how severe of a problem that you've got. I mean, if you get into like parasite infections, all kinds of crazy stuff, I mean, you might need a serious program going on. But for the most part, I mean, people that I've worked with, have problems with weight and health and all that, and I put them on a nutrition plan just like I have it in the book. Very simple, no supplements or any of these pills or powders. I don't have them count any calories, no carbs, no protein, there's none of it. They don't measure away foods. They can eat whenever they're hungry, and they drop a ton of weight and they build health in the process. And it's something that's very different because a lot of the diets, you lose a lot of weight, but you don't feel any healthier, or you can't maintain it or whatever's going on. I'm telling you, you get vibrant energy from doing what I do in there. And they've got amazing results in as little as 28 days.
You have something like exercise?
In the book, no, I mean, I talk about it kind of like I did here, but I didn't want to write another book that was like everything I just told everybody about exercise. Because really, exercise is needed, but then it's kind of like, okay, well, I'm addressing the symptoms rather than I really wanted to get to the core of the problem. So it's definitely important, but I didn't write about like how many sets to do or which exercise is going to do this or that. Because just following what's in there, and whatever exercise that you choose to do, you're gonna get amazing results from it anyway. Yeah. Oh yeah, 50 weights definitely. But again, you have to assess where your physiological load is at. So you give somebody an intense weightlifting program and they are experience a lot of job stress, they're not sleeping really well, their nutrition's horrible. In the long run, it's just going to break them down and hurt them more than it's going to help them. Any results that they get, they're likely not to be able to sustain it. Probably going to get an injury somewhere down the line. So you really have to tailor these things out. But in and of itself, yeah, at some point, and then when your stress levels, your whole physiological load becomes more manageable, then you'll have a better tolerance for exercise. So you can start shifting over, doing more intense programs or things like that.
New yoga, they do their yoga and that's like over 100.
I heard that, yeah. Somebody was telling me that one time. I mean, the one thing it does, it'd probably make me pass out. I heard that, I mean, it's 100 and, is it like 120 or something crazy? I mean, I don't know how you would breathe in there. Yeah. I mean, one of the detox pathways that we have is through our skin. And so, you take a hot bath and things like that can help you sweat. When you sweat, you can leach out toxins. But the problem is, again, what's going on when you get home? The other 23 hours of the day that you're not in the class. What are you eating? What are you doing? If you're just sweating everything out and then putting it all back in, you're just dog chasing its tail.
What is your personal opinion as far as nutrition and Alzheimer's?
I don't know a whole lot about Alzheimer's to recommend anything on there.
Talk about the metabolic
Profile?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. How to identify it and what the ratios are that very simple to follow though. I mean, you don't have to do any mathematics with it. It's just like a basic idea. You start there though. It's not 100%. Anything with a metabolic profile. It's just a good starting point. You might adjust a little bit up or down from there, but it really does give you a good idea of where to go.
When you were talking about milk, what would you recommend for infants? Well, 1 and 2-year-olds when they're offered formula, but then they start drinking milk.
Yeah, you can get an organic milk. That's the best one I found. It was still it wasn't pasteurized, homogenized, or one of them, but it didn't have any of the hormones and anything like that. So if you're gonna do it, first and foremost, get an organic one because the cows aren't treated with antibiotics; they're not given the hormones. So even if it might be pasteurized, homogenized, that's not the best nutrition for you, but it's kind of a step up. Unfortunately, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know for an infant, but you have to ask your doctor if that's okay. And tell you just to do it. It's still the processing is what I'm a bit concerned with. Almond milk, soy milk, raw almonds, yeah.
But what kind of
Oh yeah, raw nuts. Yeah, get them there.
There's also
Food you get them. If they're raw, if they're just raw. I mean, to some degree, they're going to be handled with machines to some extent.
Most almonds are pasteurized. So, I mean, is that what you're talking about?
Well, no, you want to get them raw, just as best you can. Get them raw. I mean, any nut, You want to get it raw. You just want to, as best you can, avoid like the commercial salted brands. Anything that's roasted. Yeah, anything that's roasted, because the roasting process just destroys the fats anyways in them. So.
Because what I do is snack on, I have the apple and it's
All right, everybody. Well,
Thanks,
thank all of you. Sounds good.